Hey top percenters, I'm Rather Joey, and let's talk about fairies. In particular, let's talk about Xerneas Ex and all of that lovely support that he's got. Now, I'll be honest, when we first saw Xerneas Ex and Baby Xerneas, I thought, they're not too good. In fact, even when I knew about Slurpuff and Aromatisse, I was still a little, well, they're okay, I guess. But I'm going to start this on the one card that I think really, and I mean really, brings this deck to life. And that is Fairy Garden. The ability to give Xerneas, and well, basically anything with Fairy Energy attached, free retreat makes this deck huge. It was the one thing the deck was missing. It was actually probably the one thing that stopped it being able to consistently deliver its upper level of damage. Now that it's got the free retreat though, you can take Xerneas Ex's X Blast and the fact that you can't use it 2 turns in a row, and you can wipe that in so many different ways. You already have access to Keldeo, which allows you to rush in, and we already have Floatstone for Keldeo, but now all you need is Fairy Garden and a Fairy Energy, and you can rush in, free retreat, use X Blast over and over and over again. Effectively, Fairy Garden is turning around and saying, wiping X Blast's effect, let's make that a thing. Free retreat in any deck is a huge, huge bonus. The fact that anything with a Fairy Energy attached can get free retreat, meaning that if Aromatisse is active, 1 Fairy Energy, free retreated. It has a retreat cost of 2, now it can retreat for free. Slurpuff, once again, retreat cost of 2, it can retreat for free. Both Xerneas, just like Aromatisse and Slurpuff, have a retreat cost of 2, and can retreat for free thanks to Fairy Garden. And in my opinion, that is absolutely huge. Being able to basically turn around and say, this thing that you want active is no longer active, is huge. If your opponent turns around and says, here's Catcher, I hit heads, bring that out, they can't reverse wall you. They can't turn around and say, right, now I'm going to have that absolute brick sitting there and doing nothing while I set up. Your opponent can't reverse wall you. They can't use your guy to stop you doing anything. Because it's a case of 1 Fairy Energy, you can retreat for free, and you go into doing whatever you want to do. Your opponent doesn't stop you pushing forward by putting something of yours that isn't really active. And this leads me on to another huge tool. I've already mentioned it, but let's go into more detail. Our good friend Aromatisse. Aromatisse has the ability Fairy Transfer. Fairy Transfer allows you to, as many times as you like during your turn, take any Fairy Energy on the board and move it around whoever you like. Meaning that, in conjunction with Fairy Garden, everything on your board can have free retreat as long as you have 1 Fairy Energy in play. And to be honest, once again, I think that's huge. Free retreat, that's amazing, but being able to give that free retreat to anything, even if you've managed to somehow hit a massive energy drought, having that 1 energy on board means that you can rearrange the field how you need to. You don't want you say you have Aromatisse active, you don't want it to take a hit. Attach the Fairy Energy, retreat it, bring it as Xerneas Ex, move the Fairy Energy across. You might not want to do that straight away, especially if you do only have 1 energy on the board. But this can be used to your advantage. Assume you started with a lone Spritzy. During your turn, you manage to get a Xerneas on the board. You manage to attach a Fairy Energy to it. And that's all you can really do. Next turn, you draw. It's Fairy Garden. You put Fairy Garden into play. Search out Aromatease, evolve Spritz into Aromatease. Use Fairy Transfer to move the energy from your benched Baby Xerneas onto Aromatease. Free Retreat. Move the energy back to Baby Xerneas. And you can start using Geomancy. And that actually brings us neatly onto Baby Xerneas himself. There's a good reason why you want to run the Baby Xerneas. Having the ability to manipulate the energy on your board, that's good. It's not as so good if you, as I mentioned before, hit an energy drought. It's not that good if you can't get the energy onto the board. Baby Xerneas, on the other hand, turns around and says, as long as you have guys on your bench, I can get energy out of the deck. The way that Xerneas' Geomancy is worded is that as long as you have 2 Pokemon on your bench, you can get 2 Fairy Energy from your deck and attach 1 to each of them. It's a bit different to Xerneas Ex's Emerald Slash. Emerald Slash would do 50, then you go into your deck for 2 Grass Energy and attach them to a Pokemon you have on your bench. Baby Xerneas, on the other hand, uses Geomancy to select 2 Pokemon on your bench and attach 1 energy to each of them. Now, I can completely understand why this has been done this way. With Xerneas Ex, you're looking for grass energy, you're putting them onto grass Pokemon. There's no actual leaf trans in format right now. So you really want to be able to take that energy and put it onto one Pokemon. Baby Xerneas, on the other hand, is going for Fairy Energy. He doesn't actually necessarily have to attach it to a Fairy Pokemon. This is a deck where you have Fairy Transfer, you have Aromatease. They're basically trying to give you a limiter. They're trying to limit how good Geomancy is because of the tools that exist around it. Geomancy combined with Fairy Transfer is absolutely huge. In fact, I think a lot of this deck... in fact, that's one thing I can say about this deck. I think a lot of what is in this deck is huge. It's got so many good individual pieces that when they come together, they explode all over the place. You don't really have to worry about where you're investing your energy initially, because Aromatease can move it around. You don't have to worry about energy droughts because you've got the Baby Xerneas with Geomancy. You don't have to worry about huge damage output because Xerneas Ex has 2 decent attacks. I mean, even looking at Xerneas Ex is a key attacker for this deck. Baby Xerneas is your setup. Aromatease and Fairy Garden are for board maintenance and for healing. Xerneas Ex is where the key attacking comes in with this deck. Xerneas Ex has 2 attacks. The first attack, for a Fairy and a double colourless, you can use Breakthrough. Breakthrough does 60 damage and 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Basically, it's Megalo Cannon, it's Night Sphere, sized down slightly because it doesn't require 2 of a given energy. Xerneas Ex's biggest attack, though, has to be X-Blast. This is the reason why people are looking at it. For 2 Fairy and 2 colourless energy, you can do 140 damage, but you can't use X-Blast during your next turn. Now, as I've already mentioned, you can use a Pokemon like Keldeo with Rush In. You rush in, free retreat, you can X-Blast again. When a Pokemon hits the bench, all effects are wiped. That includes special conditions, confusion, sleep, anything like that. It also includes the effects of attacks. If your opponent hits you with an attack that limits your damage output, that's gone if you hit the bench. If an attack that you've used says you can't use that attack again next turn, and you hit the bench and come back out, you can use that attack again. Effectively going back to the bench resets your Pokemon. And to be honest, with Fairy Garden, you don't actually need Keldeo. Keldeo does serve another purpose in this deck, and I'm going to get to that shortly. But with Fairy Garden, you don't need Keldeo. You can easily just turn around and say, here's my Xerneas, let's just use X-Blast. I've got Fairy Garden in play, I'm going to free retreat, bring out another Xerneas Ex, and use Aromatisse to move the energy from my first Xerneas Ex onto the second one. You can just alternate those two. The way that Xerneas Ex is written is this Pokemon can't use X-Blast during your next turn. There's nothing stopping from you, the player, using X-Blast next turn. Xerneas Ex puts the effect on himself. It doesn't state that X-Blast cannot be used, it's stating that this Pokemon cannot use it. And, as I've said, you could use Keldeo, free retreat back into Xerneas, that wipes the effect, or you can just alternate two different Xerneas. It is absolutely amazing how you can actually make that work. 280 damage over 2 turns, that's pretty much anything guaranteed to be knocked out. Even if you put 140 damage on an X, and then your opponent retreats that X, brings out something else, well, sure, they can bring out another X. Next turn, you put 140 damage on that. Even though you've not claimed a knockout with it, when you're talking about these numbers, it really doesn't matter. Because you've turned around and said, oh, there's a big guy with a lot of damage on it. Here's another big guy with a lot of damage on him. It's not the whole fact that you're turning around and saying, oh, well, here's a bit of damage, here's a little bit of damage. It's 140 damage. Most stage 2s can't stand up to it, stage 1s and most basics can't stand up to it. The only things that can withstand it are X's that will have 170 or 180 hit points. And heck, if you go X-Blast onto your opponent's 170 hit point X, next turn you don't even need to switch Xerneas. If they retreat it to the bench, all you have to do is just go Breakthrough, 62 on new active. That thing that's got 140 damage, put it up to 170. I'll take 2 prizes now, thank you. It works amazingly well, and Xerneas' attacks have amazing synergy with each other. If your opponent isn't using 180 hit point X's, then Breakthrough is going to be an amazing attack for cleaning up the board later on, for finishing the game off. The deck does have one slight weakness, and it's a weakness that most decks share. Status conditions. Now, there are actually 2 ways of this deck dealing with status conditions. The first is Slurpuff. Slurpuff, like Aromatisse, is a stage 1. It has the ability Sweet Veil, which is effectively the same ability as Virizion X's Verdant Wind. Anything that's got a fairy energy attached to it cannot be affected by a special condition. If that Pokemon already has a special condition and you attach a fairy energy, the special condition is wiped. It's gone. No more poison, no more sleep, no more paralysis, no more confusion. It's all gone. Oh, no more burn as well. And to be honest, I think that is a good utility to have. It's one of the things. Verdant Wind was one of the things that made Virizion so good. Virizion wasn't just energy acceleration, it was energy acceleration and immunity to status conditions, meaning that Hypnotoxic Laser past turn 2 didn't tend to do too much. Slurpuff, pretty much the same story. It can turn off Hypnotoxic Laser status attacks that deliver status conditions like Excelgor's deck and cover, they're gone. They don't. It's just here's damage. That's it. So here's 50 damage back into the deck. Oh, you're not paralysed. No poison either. Joy. No one running deck and cover wants to see that. That being said, though, as I said, there are actually two ways of dealing with status conditions in the Xerneas Ex deck. I've mentioned him 2 or 3 times already this episode. We do have Keldeo X. Now, whether you want to run Keldeo for rushing or if you want to run Slurpuff, all depends on you as a player, on what you personally prefer. You may personally prefer Slurpuff because it's a case of he sits there and stops status conditions from happening in the first place. Whereas Keldeo, on the other hand, he doesn't stop the special conditions from happening, but he's a 1-card answer. Slurpuff, even if you want to run just one, is a 2-card answer. You need to run the Swirlix and the Slurpuff. Keldeo is just, here's one Keldeo. I can get rid of status conditions now. It all comes down to what you personally prefer. If you personally want to stop status conditions from being a thing at all, if you want to stop Virbank and Hypnotoxic from doing just 30 damage, or putting you to sleep even though you can just remove it with rushing in later, then Slurpuff's the card for you. If you don't mind your opponent going, here's Virbank, here's Hypnotoxic, take 30 damage, because next turn you can just go rush in, free retreat, keep swinging again, then feel free to actually run that as your option. Both options are just as viable as the other. Keldeo can save you a lot of deck space. It's also a way of resetting Xerneas if you only have one Xerneas Ex out at a time. Slurpuff, on the other hand, is more guaranteed. Your opponent has to get rid of Slurpuff before they can start using status conditions at all. So they don't have poison, they don't have confusion, paralysis, burn, any of that. Slurpuff just shuts it down. Keldeo actually responds to status conditions, whereas Slurpuff makes it so not a thing. And as I've said over and over and over again in the last couple of minutes, which one you run is completely up to you. Personally, I prefer the idea of Slurpuff, but I can see the merits of Keldeo. It does save deck space. Before I sign off, I'm going to quickly actually cover some of the trainers that also work in this deck amazingly well. First one I want to mention is, oddly enough, just because it's the first one that's in front of me right now, is Evo Soda. Evo Soda is an amazing card in this. I've got to stop saying that. Evo Soda is a great card in this deck, just for the whole fact that you will be running at least one stage 1 lineup. You will be running the Aromateas. You might not choose Slurpuff, you're going to be running Aromateas. Fairy Transfer is an ability that's just too good to not have. That being said, a lot of people will probably turn around and say, well, Evo Soda isn't that great in the deck. You can just search out Aromateas. You can use something like Level Ball to just grab the Aromateas, pop it on top of your Spritzy. Evo Soda can kind of take Level Ball's place, effectively. A lot of the things that you want to actually bring out are Level Ball compatible, but they're also Evo Soda compatible. They both work the same way. All Evo Soda does is allow you to evolve from deck. It's another consistency card. I'm not going to say run Evo Soda in place of Level Ball, because Level Ball does grab stuff that Evo Soda can't. Level Ball can grab you your Spritzy, can grab you your Swirlix. Evo Soda can't grab them. Evo Soda, on the other hand, can grab Aromateas, it can grab Slurpuff. Personally, I don't have anything against the idea of running, say, 3 level ball, 2 Evo Soda. That way, you've got a good chance of hitting level ball when you need it. But if you had to use a level ball, or even 2 level balls in your early game, say turn 1, you really want to make sure you get 2 Spritzy down your bench. Just so if something happens to 1, you can still have the Aromateas next turn. Well, that's 2 level balls down. And if you're running 4 level ball, well, that's 2 left in your deck. You've already seen 2. The odds of seeing the other 2 are pretty slim. But if you are running the 4 level ball, the 2 Evo Soda, and of course you're going to have your Aromateas, you do increase your chances of actually hitting a card that will get you your Aromateas. Say you use a card like Xerneas or N. Well, if you don't hit the Aromateas, without Evo Soda, you have to hope to hit one of your 2 level balls. With Evo Soda, I mean, just 2 of them, you've effectively doubled your chances of hitting a relevant trainer. You had 2 level ball, you also have 2 Evo Soda now. You're trying to hit 1 in 4 cards. And that's if you don't draw into Aromateas itself. And personally, when it comes to the idea of just turning around and saying, this card increases my consistency, I'm going to go for it. I want consistency. Consistency is what separates skill from luck. By doubling your chances, you pretty much guarantee that you can get the turn 2 Aromateas. And that is going to be a real big help for you. One final trainer I want to cover before signing off is Muscle Band. Now, right now, I don't think Muscle Band belongs in the deck just yet. I'm not saying that Muscle Band is bad, and I'm not saying that Xerneas can't make use of Muscle Band. What I'm saying is, right now, Xerneas doesn't need it. The way the numbers work on Xerneas Ex currently, you can easily alternate between 60 and 140 every other turn, meaning that you can deliver 200 damage over 2 turns. Now, 200 damage over 2 turns, that's a 2-shot on anything in format. Any X is gone. The only thing you're not 2-shotting are Megas. Now, the thing with Mega Pokemon is, right now we have Mega Blastoise and Mega Venusaur. Neither of which are guaranteeing themselves to be huge contenders in the upcoming format. And, to be honest, I don't see them being huge obstacles to deal with. Heck, even if they do turn out to be huge obstacles, without Muscle Band, you build this deck the correct way. You go for Keldeo alongside Fairy Garden, and the idea of just alternating or resetting Xerneas, then you can easily deliver 280 damage in 2 turns. So the deck could already handle Megas. Now, if you have to do that constantly, you could probably run into a situation where you're unable to reset. Say maybe your opponent played a counter stadium to get rid of your Fairy Garden, and no, you can't retreat for free. Use Shauna and Juniper, whatever draw support you have, and you don't draw it into another Fairy Garden, then yeah, you're going to be stuck doing a 200 a turn. That being said though, it's still, you're doing 200 over 2 turns. Your opponent is most likely running something that's got less than 200 hit points. The only thing that stops you are Megas. Coming up against a Mega and then whiffing the stadium, it's going to be the chances of it, I say, would be pretty slim. But to get back onto Muscle Band, to actually get myself on focus with this, Muscle Band right now, we're still in an X format, we're not in the Mega format yet. And really in an X format, alternating the 140 and 60, that's going to knock most things out. nobody's running Eviolite right now. On that same token, I can't see people running Hard Charm straight away. So the deck doesn't need Muscle Band because there's nothing taking your 200 and making it into 160 over 2 turns. That being said, if you are going to be playing the Xerneas Ex deck, I would suggest getting your hands on a couple of Muscle Bands. I wouldn't put them into your list just yet. If people start to tech Hard Charm and Eviolite, or Megas do become a bigger thing, then you add Muscle Band, because that's when you need it. And the first few people to add Muscle Band at the right time will be the ones to catch people by surprise. And Surprise Factor itself can win games or even tournaments. So what I'm saying is, right now, the Xerneas Ex deck doesn't need Muscle Band. It may require it in the future, but when that comes about, you'll have them and then you can put them in. Basically, if you start running Muscle Band now, you're going to be taking up space that could go elsewhere. Space that doesn't need to be used is getting used. Whereas later on, you could find opponents that started to tech Eviolite or Hard Charm just for the Xerneas matchup because they want to take your 200 over 2 turns and make it 160, so that forcing you to free shot them. That's when you start adding Muscle Band. That's when you add Muscle Band. That's when you basically turn around and say, "Oh, you've teched against me. Here's my counter attack." Your Eviolite, your Hard Charm, they don't do anything anymore. And yeah, I think so far that's all I really have to say about the Xerneas Ex deck. It does seem to carry the best of a lot of decks right now. It has huge damage output, it carries the best abilities of Darkrai High Dragon. In fact, actually, quickly on that note, with the ability to move energy, you can use Max Potion to fully heal a Pokemon without actually losing the energy attached to it. All you have to do is move the energy off the Pokemon you want to heal, Max Potion, then move the energy back. Can't believe I nearly forgot that. As I was saying though, you get the best of Darkrai High Dragon with the ability to move energy around. You have the 2 of the strongest points of Genset Virizion coming forward. You have Baby Xerneas for energy acceleration, you have Slowpoke for nullifying special conditions straight off the bat. And you are capable of handling the format. Nothing right now turns around and says, "Oh, fairies, we take care of them easily." In fact, the biggest problem that fairies would have had, which was Clink and Cobalion, was removed with our rotation. So yeah, with all of that said, so what do you guys think? Do you think that Xerneas Ex is a worthwhile deck, or is it just being overhyped because it's the new big thing? Let me know what you think down below. And until next time, I've been Writer Joey. You guys are top percent. Peace out.